Here we are again, ready to talk about high altitude cooking in New Mexico. I'm Mindy Turner with New Mexico State University Cooperative Extension Service, your Curry County Family and Consumer Science agent. So we've been talking for this series about high altitude cooking. And remember, the information that I'm giving you is just an excerpt. It was in our newsletter, an excerpt as well, of the high altitude cooking publication from the Cooperative Extension Service. It is Guide E215. Our fantastic Dr. Nancy Flores, one of our food science specialists, and Cindy Davies, who's retired as a home economist, put this together. So I know the information is great and accurate, and I'm blessed to be able to share that information with you. The science behind it, some people are really interested in that and want to know. Most of us, though, just want to know, how do we fix it? How do we do it right so that it works for where we are? So we're going to move into, we talked a little bit about our foods that are cooked with moisture and how pressure can help with that and what we need to adjust and do differently, maybe for our soups and our stews and our vegetables. We talked about making our candies and our frostings and using that thermometer and the cold water test to see how it's measuring up with what we need to do different for our altitude, because things boil at different levels here and the heat is differently conducted at our altitude as opposed to sea level or some place that happens to be lower than us. Really, where we see it, most of us that will complain or talk about it, is in our baking. Just doesn't bake like it should. It doesn't taste right, the texture's not the same, whatever that piece is that changes the quality of that product for us. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the things to be aware of, how you might adjust and adapt. So another great publication you can get from Cooperative Extension, you can get it from the New Mexico State University website where all of our extension publications are housed, or you can contact our office here in Curry County, 818 North Main in Clovis, or shoot us an email, curry@nmsu.edu, and request that, and we can send it out to you. This is Circular 293, and again, this is by another one of our retired specialists, but it is cake and mix recipes for high altitudes in New Mexico. So it is already all pulled together for you with those altitude adaptations in it. So you don't have to try to figure out where to adjust or what to adjust. It's already ready to go. We've done the same thing. We had a phenomenal group of agents work on our baking projects for New Mexico 4-H, and all of those recipes have been adapted and tested at high altitude to make sure that it's something that the kids can make and come out with a good quality product as they're learning, especially because it's hard when you're first getting started to figure out how all this altitude stuff works. So those are two fantastic publications that I recommend you have, because again, I'm just giving you a little taste of what is in those and the information that you might need. So as we move into our baking and the things we want to, we've all got that favorite thing, that favorite baked good that we want to make, or that grandma made, or that mom made, or my great aunt, in Oklahoma, 4 states over, used to make, and it's just not quite right. It just doesn't come out the same, and a lot of that has to do with our location and being at a higher altitude and the air pressure and how that affects the way things cook. So one of the things that we're going to want to look at is oven temperature. Now this is a chart, again, that was included in the newsletter. It's included in that publication. Really good information for you to have to refer to related to high altitude cooking. And the first thing on there is oven temperature. Now we know the temperature is the temperature, but how our products react to it and the ingredients interact with one another is directly related to our barometric pressure, which is because of our altitude. So we're typically going to need to increase 15 to 25 degrees for whatever we're making. We may need to lower the increase if we're making those really delicate cakes or even chocolate cake, because we always want to avoid that little bit of a burnt taste to it. We don't want to get it too hot too fast, but we do want to give it the opportunity for the leavening agents, and by that I mean the things that make it puffy and fluffy and bake good like, okay, that we put in there. We want to give that the opportunity to quickly set the structure of that item. So the idea is that we have a little bit higher temperature to set that structure before it can over evaporate, because just like the water boils faster, that means evaporation happens faster. So we lose a lot of that moisture within our items. So with that, we're talking about changing the temperatures. That means we may need to adjust our time. So the baking time, we're probably going to decrease that. We up the temperature, get it hotter faster. So we need to decrease that baking time so that it does not burn. So we're going to look at decreasing 5 to 8 minutes per 30 minutes of whatever that cook time is that's recommended for that. So again, we're baking it at a higher temperature. That means we may need less time to bake it so that we don't want our products to burn. It's a lot of time and effort to get it made just right to then stick it in the oven and mess it all up. So we want to be very aware of that. So then the next thing we're going to talk about is sugar. Sugar, why does it matter? More sugar, better, right? That's not always the case. Again, baking has a lot of science behind it to make these good, wonderful, yummy products that have the correct texture, whether you're trying to make a tart or a pie or a cake or a cookie. The difference in all of those things is the texture and how they all go together. So there's a lot of science that goes into figuring out how these ingredients need to interact. Sugar is a big part of that. So when we are cooking at a higher altitude, we probably are going to need to decrease some of that sugar anywhere about a tablespoon per cup. So for every cup that recipe calls for, you're going to leave out a tablespoon when you do that. Again, because of that increased evaporation, you get a more concentrated amount of sugar altogether, and that can just kind of weaken that whole structure. It's like we talked about with the candy, kind of getting that crystallized, clumpy type thing, and we don't want that. So decreasing the sugar is one way to avoid that. Liquid. Now, of course, all of this hinges on how fast things boil and how fast things evaporate. That's the liquid part of what we're putting into our baked goods. So we want to think about increasing that liquid, maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons at 1,000 feet above, and then about another 1.5 teaspoons for each additional 1,000 feet. So again, for where we sit in Curry County, we might want to increase anywhere from 2.5 to 3 tablespoons of liquid in that recipe to make it bake appropriately. Another thing you can do is maybe instead of adding a bunch of extra liquid, you throw in an extra egg, because that's going to add more of that liquidy moisture, but keep a little more of that density, maybe not be quite so runny. Because again, extra liquid is going to keep it from evaporating off too quickly and getting a dried out product. And we see that a lot, again, in New Mexico, largely a desert state. We see a lot of things that just dry out really quickly and they don't maintain that moisture and that quality within our baked goods. So we want to be very much aware of that. So liquid is one of the ways we can adjust. Okay, and then finally our flour. Now it talks about in the cake and mixed recipes, using cake flour. So there's cake flour versus bread flour, wheat flour and whole wheat flour. Of course, now we have flours, all different types, because gluten-free baking is its own special thing to learn and do a little differently as well. And a lot of things, it's okay to just use all-purpose flour. That's what it was designed for. But you may need a little more in your recipe just to make everything kind of sit and gel and hold that shape and get together right. So at 35,000 feet, we're looking at maybe an extra tablespoon into the whole recipe. That's not per cup, that's just an extra tablespoon. And then for each additional 1,500 feet, about another tablespoon on top of that. So again, where we sit here in Curry County, probably about an extra 2 tablespoons should do it right with your flour. Now, sometimes you're using a flour with a higher protein content. That's where I talked about all those different types and what you want to put together. But overall, that flour just helps with your structure. So a lot of what we're adapting and doing when we talk about high altitude is working on that structure of the item. It's not so much the flavor as it is, like you said, that texture that we're expecting, what makes it be that type of cake or that type of cookie, and how it all holds and sits together. So these are some of the basic things that you can do to try out, adapt for those recipes. Make notes on your recipe card and your recipe book, on that paper you've printed out from that Pinterest recipe, so that you know what you changed to get the best quality product and what you like the best, because ultimately it's your preference. as to how you like that item that's going to determine how you want to bake it. Okay, now I just also want to say one of the things I find is that people have issues because their ingredients maybe aren't the freshest, and that's okay. It's going to take a long time to bake with all of this baking powder. But I just want to remind you, when we talk about sifting our flour, a lot of it is pre-sifted. That's great if it's really fresh. If it's set for a bit, whether in the canister, the bag, wherever you keep it stored, you're going to want to sift that. If you're going to want to shake up, okay, your baking powder or sift it in with your flour, because part of what you're doing is reactivating those ingredients so that they all work together and talk to each other like they're supposed to make your baked good. I'm Mindy Turner. I want to remind you we have one more session. We're going to talk a little bit more about that baking piece and maybe how we can adapt some things. I hope you'll try some new things. Grab those publications, use those charts, make the best quality product that you can make. Again, I'm with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, and I will see you here next time.